Wow, thank you so much, guys. I mean, very, very key pieces of information that we need to make people aware of, and hopefully people benefit from the discussion today. Now we'll open it up for just general Q&A. If there's any other questions or any other points that Jatin you want to cover before we do that? Nope. Okay. So
I
does anyone
think
have any questions in the group? Please fire away.
I can recognize it was intensely information overload. That's just kind of how this goes.
So I think Kristen has a question.
Go for it.
Kristen, we can't hear you. Would you like to type it up in the chat, maybe? Maybe you're having some difficulties connecting. Okay, I think she's going to try to come back in. Anyone else, please, if there's any other questions? So Jatin, I have one from my end. When we talked about the family tracks of like people coming in and basically applying for visa from the for their family members, there's one track that I'm aware of, which is the parent visa, right? So it's for the parents you apply through, I think the lottery system that you talked about. Is that still working, or has that been, currently been decommissioned? Because the last time I checked, nothing was going on in that one.
I don't know if it ever worked, but the reality is that what you're referring to. So, okay, so traditionally what happened was that every year, usually in January, um, sponsors inside of Canada would get an opportunity to put their name in the hat for consideration. And then COVID hit. And basically over COVID, like the expected timeline for when the portal would open changed. And, in the middle of COVID, like it opened up in April, then maybe later on it opened up the next year in September, those kinds of things. So there's very weird like timelines when that portal opened up. The idea is that every year is supposed to be a fresh portal with fresh applicants or the fresh candidates who want to announce that they want to sponsor. The last few draws of names have been from a portal that was created, I think, in like the end of 2021, maybe, yeah, right, end of 2021. And that's really frustrating for a lot of families because those who may not have qualified in 2021 now qualify today. The gist of it is this: as the last couple of draws have been from a pool where if you have not put your name into that pool, you didn't have a chance of even getting selected. I suspect that given the backlash and the kind of quiet settlements that have happened in the background from with immigration and like a series of lawyers that I know, the reality is I think this year they're going to open up a fresh portal again because if we stick to the portal created um, that was created a couple of years ago, there was around 200,000 applications that were sent in from sponsors inside of Canada. And if the government is saying they're capping the selection to 20,000 every year, that means it's going to take 10 years to complete that pool. And so, practically speaking, I just don't see the government continuing on with that trend. I'll be actually quite shocked if they do that again this year. But I mean, who knows, right? We'll see. Parents and grandparents, unfortunately, aren't the most prioritized in terms of streams of applications that are there. Focuses on economy, of course. So economic immigration takes up more than 50% of the levels planning that's being done. So the levels planning being the predictions that the government announces, saying, okay, this is how many people we're going to accept in each different stream. We have over 50 streams of permanent residency, believe it or not, which is wild to think about. And it seems like there's new ones being made all the time. So there's a lot of inefficiencies on that end as well. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, like parent, grandparent, it's a bit of an unpredictable uh, beast right now. I wish I hope it goes back to January again. And every January you can predict, okay, that's the time you can put your name in, but we'll see. I suspect if we don't hear anything by the summer in terms of an announcement, because now it seems like November, October is when they like to make those announcements. Um, right now, I'm not really holding my breath. I don't know, Rowan, if you wanted to add anything there.
I just think, the solution in quotes seems to be at the moment to just develop as many pilots as possible. So there's all
Yeah.
these new programs in every province where everyone's just pilot, let's do another pilot program. Let's see how this works. Let's see how this goes. And the federal government is doing the same thing. And so there's all these new streams coming up. But I think, what Jetson said is really astute, is that there's an efficiency problem here. Creating new pilots is not necessarily going to speed up a process at all in any way, shape, or form. It means developing a whole new program, a whole new way of applying for the program, officers who need to learn the program to review the programs, be able to review the application forms. So it might not necessarily be a benefit. They're useful because they direct applications into certain categories or boxes. But at the same time, as far as efficiency, I think we can anticipate a lot of delays going forward.
Understood. I think that kind of ties into the next question I had, right? Was, as we said, there were pilot programs and things coming up. Alberta just recently canceled, or 3 weeks ago, apparently put the PNP program that we had here on pause, right? So people who were students that I know at least who were banking on that, what's the next step for them then? Should they look at moving to the different provinces, or is there something else remedy available to them?
Yeah, I won't be surprised if some of these students think of being provinces, quite frankly. I mean, there's a lot of, like, I'm being very optimistic. I feel like I have no choice but to be optimistic, because in my mind, I just can't expect how reasonably the government can just completely block like hundreds of thousands of people, I suspect, from accessing the provincial nominee program. Um, the reality, so the provincial nominee program itself is not shut down. It's just one category is shut down, but that category is busy. Like, that's 90%, 95% of the business that program actually takes on. So naturally, it's going to have this massive effect and create a lot of fear. Those who are, we're close to hitting their 1 year, for example, and qualifying are out of luck right now. What I'm telling, I said this in my presentation. I said express entry is probably the only option right now. Just push for it, try for it. The thing about express entry is that because it's split into federal and provincial streams, so federal is where everyone has to apply, and then the provinces like data mine from the federal pool and start saying, okay, we're going to issue invitations left, right, and center based on whatever criteria, which they don't really well advertise. That they give you like a very generic, okay, if you kind of have these factors around your application, then you have a higher chance of being selected. But the beauty of Alberta express entry is that where the federal pool, I think the law, like you posted, so I read like you posted in the chat that the most recent invitation, I think it's like almost 2,800 invitations, right? I don't think you put the points in there, but on the federal, when you look at the federal program, the points are very high, 490s to 500s. So that's a really high program. Like before COVID, these programs were at like 470, 460, and even 450, which is huge. Like that's a big difference. The Alberta Express entry system actually selects anyone from 300 to above. So there are people with like points in the 300s and the low 400s who are getting selected. My receptionist literally got selected through Express entry. And it's not to say that she like is not a skilled worker. It's just based on the criteria set by immigration. She had no business being selected by Express entry, but she was selected to the province. I think her score was like 415 or 420 or something. She came straight from high school and went right into her education. And she also studied outside of Alberta. So right now I'm pushing every client, if they have skilled work experience, right to express entry. I'm saying just put your name in the hat there, select Alberta, and hope for an invitation. And if you have a couple of years in your work permit, I predict that you will be okay. If you're coming to the finish line, yeah, that's going to be a really stressful transition. And there's really no answers for you.
And I think it's, important to, keep an eye on the pilots. As much as I say, pilots are kind of popping up all over the place, and those are delays. We want clients to, we want to assess and see, are there pilot programs that do help this person? So, I think express entry is like the way to go, and the number one place to check. Would you qualify for Alberta express entry? And then also have a look, see, like, what are your skill base? Are you fitting into a construction, a hospitality, a, new medical industry, stream? There may be a number of things that change over the coming months. So as you're getting closer to the year of work, remember these things change. These pilots change, the programs change, the application requirements and eligibility change. So make sure you do a really fluid and broad-based assessment. Make sure you're working, with someone like Jethan and myself who, have a legitimate business, who work hard, who really, really want to help fellow immigrants out, and who are going to do the assessment that are needed. You want to have a broad-based assessment because you never know what's going to happen in 2 months by the time you're ready to apply. So keep your eyes open and ears open on what's happening in Alberta. And like Jeff and I am trying to remain optimistic that we're going to get, a number of people, but we totally appreciate how difficult it is for so many people who maybe do not fit into these streams. And now they may be stuck doing temporary work for a longer period of time in Alberta for sure.
Yep, thank you so much. So basically what I'm hearing from you guys for now is hang in there, apply for the Express Entry program, choose Alberta as the province of interest, and then, keep your fingers crossed. And don't lose hope.
Yep.
But I understand the point about keeping an eye or your hand on the pulse of things, because things change. I know from my own experience when I was applying, during the program or during my application, there was a change in the system which allowed me to get more points, right? Which kind of put me above the hurdle to get qualified and be called in for the invite, right? So definitely a very, very, very valid point. I think one more question from my side, and then hopefully we'll have people, unless there's a question from the attendees, please feel free to jump in. I guess no one for now. If you have a question, please feel free to enter it into the chat as well. And if you feel more comfortable in speaking in the Ukrainian language, we do have the interpreters available today. So this is also a very good opportunity to actually get your questions answered. So please feel free to jump in. As that sinks in, I'll give me a moment. Jatin, I think one question that I have received is about the open work permit. Is that different from, or how does that differ from a normal work permit?
So an open work permit, like the name suggests, right? You can virtually work for anyone, anywhere in the country. Most people who have open work permits are either you went as an international student and then you applied for a post-graduation, like you graduated and you apply for an open work permit so long as you qualify, because not every school qualifies and not every program qualifies. The other side of it is they're typically partners or the spouses of study permit holders or somebody who's on a closed work permit inside of Canada. I guess the last way of accessing the open work permit is if you have an application for permanent, if you're inside of Canada and you have an application for permanent residency that's ongoing, there are streams for open work permits there as well. So even in Canada spousal application, or if you're doing some kind of PNP application, there are certain points in the application where you may be able to convert to an open work permit. But there is no, I had somebody, I had this, and this is where misinformation comes in. So I had this inquiry come in probably last week, and buddy was just like, listen, I've been told that you can come to Canada and then you come as a visitor and you apply for an open work permit. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, let's just slow down there, right? And so there's no program where you come to Canada and do an open work permit. Let me just make that clear. There are specific scenarios, like I just mentioned, where you might be able to do that. But even to better understand this, it was not until very recently, and it was a COVID influenced policy, where visitor visa holders inside of Canada could switch to a work permit, being a closed work permit for the most part. If you already have a partner of a international student or a work permit holder, then you already had access to opening the door towards open work permits. I don't know, Bilal, does that answer your question?
Yep, it does actually. Interesting point about people thinking that they can convert the visitor visa into a work permit. I've actually heard that as well. I've had that question asked as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's specific scenarios, right? You can probably do that, but that requires, for the most part, you to have some kind of partner inside of Canada who's on a study permit or on a work permit themselves in a specific category. So most people know you can't just come here and just create an open work permit because that's not the law here.
I think that was just the case during COVID, right? So that was an exception that was done at that time, and it would probably will not be carried over for the long term.
There was a small moment. There was a small moment.
And I mean, as they say, they were few and far between. So let's see what happens then. Okay, so any other questions from anyone in the attendees? I'll check the chat as well. Alrighty then, I think we do have enough questions and the things addressed. Any closing comments from you, Jatin, from Rowan, please feel free.
No, I think nothing on my end. Ron, I'll let you finish it off. I'll just say quickly, guys, like there are very few people who practice this space as actively as we do. Ron and I both have I think the experience and the benefit of being involved outside of just like everyday practice in a number of different sectors and organizations that allows us to kind of keep our finger on the beat of things. So we're always happy to get involved in just high level discussions if they come across your desk. It could be on immigration policy. It could be on finding a way to integrate immigration into the strategic planning of your organization, for example. I mean, we do a lot of work on that front as well. Outside just the general information piece, because I'll say it for me at least. I don't know if everyone does agree, but like misinformation is my biggest issue, and it's probably the main reason I have a job is because people just don't understand how immigration works, and those misconceptions often result in people making some really bad moves on the immigration front, and sometimes most of the time moves that are not easily reconciled through the legislation. So keep yourself informed, right? Our firms are probably really, really happy to chat if you just want to bounce ideas or talk specific case files. No worries there. I'll let you finish, Ron.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, there's so many places to get immigration information, and there's so much poor information out there. And so, making sure you've got the right resources, making sure you've got the right contacts, to be able to have these discussions, like Jatin says, at a high level, whether that's from an industry specific level, whether that's from an organizational level, from a particular business, perspective. What is going on? How is it going to impact your business, your industry, your agency? It's really important to bring people in to have panel discussions, to do some work with your teams, to try and figure out how you as an organization can get that information out there. And I think that's why Jeff and I love being involved, with Pro Bono Law Alberta and all these wonderful initiatives that they're putting forward this year, is because we get to disseminate as much information to as many people as possible, outside of our roles as lawyers and as running law firms. I think we both relish and enjoy the community aspect of this and being able to help as many people as possible. So please keep that in mind as you go forward, and reach out anytime. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be concluding this webinar for now. A follow-up email will include the details for contact information for both Jatin and Rowan, along with the references to all the websites and other resources that Jatin had pointed out and Rowan had pointed out. If there's nothing else for today, thank you so much for joining, and we look forward to helping you guys out in the future. And please feel free to reach out to Rowan and Jatin at any point in time, or even PBLA itself. Thank you so much.
Guys.
Take care.
Thank you.